Hey everyone, Andre here, along with a very special guest, being Gavin Price, co-founder of Playtonic Games, director, I believe, of Yooka-Replaylee, and of course plenty of other games from our gaming past, as you used to work at Rare as well. So you've done a lot in your time. But I wanted to bring you on to discuss the recent release of Yooka-Replaylee. For those who don't know, it's essentially a remake or a really, I don't fully know what you consider it. Maybe you'd have a better term for it, but essentially a remake of your Playtonic's very first game, being Yooka-Laylee, and it launched to, from what I could tell, pretty great critical acclaim and acclaim from the fan base. So how's it been for you seeing the reaction to this game that you first made, I think, around 8 years ago?
Yeah, it's been nothing short of amazing. I think we ended up landed on the phrase a remakester. So it's not quite a remaster, it's not quite a remake, it's a remakester. And it didn't start off that way as well. You could also call it like Yooka-Laylee, the unfinished business edition, as what sometimes we call it internally. So no, it's been good. I'm really proud of the team and the fact that we were able to go back and correct a lot of things that just time pressure before, financial and time pressure just like stopped us. Let me re-engage the lights. There we go. No, seeing the critical reception and the fan reception's been lovely, and it keeps coming in as well, which is great. We keep finding more people getting around to talking about it and saying how much they enjoy this, how much of an improvement it is. So it's exactly what we hoped for.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, as one who was following the original Kickstarter, a decade ago now, and we had you back on the channel way back then. So yeah. Thanks again for hopping on again with us after all this time. It's been fun to see the development of Playtonic and Yooka-Laylee as well. And, I was very much excited for the original game, maybe a little underwhelmed by it in the end. And then, when I heard you guys are making Yooka-Replaylee, I'm like, all right, I'm interested. How are they, going to improve it? And you guys nailed it, in my opinion. I had a blast playing through the remake, whereas I struggled to play through the original a bit. Some have called it like what they expected, or maybe not what they expected, but like what the original game should have been. But I feel like that's almost selling. I feel like that's selling a short. But I'm curious on what your take is, because I feel like what this game is, it goes well beyond the promise of what the original game was set up in the original Kickstarter. But do you have a perspective on that?
From the Kickstarter, we really focused too much on going nostalgic and banjo and in that style and format, I think. And this time around, we've just added a lot more quality of life features that don't follow that. So I think we're authentically what our original plan was to do that. Whether that was good or bad, this light is crazy. But this time around, we were way much more modern, forward thinking, and trying to get that blend and split between old and new right. So yeah, the different features we added, like map finding, anything that we thought we contributed to a UX program in terms of players just being able to enjoy and have that really rapid sense of progression and doing things and getting somewhere with the game. Anything that got in the way of that, we either look to fix it, swap for something new, or just cut and say, no, we don't want that anymore. We just asked ourselves most of the time, does this make the game more enjoyable? And the answer is yes. That helped us make a decision on it.
Right, that makes complete sense. But something a lot of people have noted is that this game almost feels a little bit more Mario Odyssey-esque than Banjo-Kazooie-esque, which of course the original game was launched as essentially a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, that very classic collectathon style of game, in particular in that case where you're unlocking moves along the way, whereas in Yooka-Replaylee, you no longer unlock moves, you have them all from the get-go. There's a lot more collectibles to grab. It feels a little bit more freeing overall, or maybe a lot more freeing. And so was that like an intentional decision early on to kind of step away from the Banjo-Kazooie ethos and move more toward, for lack of a better word, a Mario style platformer? Or what was your guys' take on that?
Yeah. I think like Mario Odyssey was a step away from previous Mario games towards more constant collecting.
Good point.
So you've got like Mario 64 and that style game over here, which is very much go into a level, you pick a star, you do it, and then you come back out. So the experience is a bit stop-start when you're in a level. And then you've got Banjo, you've just got, well, you've entered a level, just do everything you can constantly. And then Odyssey's coming a little bit, and then Yooka-Replaylee is, they've come a lot closer to each other. And I think that's a good ground that players get that, bigger, larger amount of things to do in a sitting. And as they wander around, you can find way more things to be surprised by and just, oh, quick, pick up this. And sometimes, it's something like a grander task. It involves talking to a character, getting a bit of story and then going off and doing that task. And then sometimes it's something way more just mechanical or finding a secret or sense of discovery and surprise, which I think's great fun as well. So yeah, we were big Mario Odyssey fans, and as always, you can look to what Nintendo are doing just to see a little bit of, oh, this is how we should course correct and think about things in future, not just over the moment-to-moment gameplay, but talking everything like camera, level design, layout, currency, economy, loads of things.
That's such a good point that, yeah, as you mentioned, some people have said this is more Mario Odyssey-like, but yeah, Mario Odyssey is more Banjo-Kazooie-like in its own way. So yeah, that's fun that they've kind of met in the middle here and found this really good middle ground. But now you mentioned the project didn't always start off necessarily that way, or more accurately, I think you said quite as a, I forget what you said exactly, like a remaster or a remake, or it sounded like it changed direction, or the idea of it changed at some point. So can you tell me more about the early days of Yooka-Replaylee and how that evolved over the course of the development?
It started off way more just as we wanted to test a few things in terms of some of the projects that we're building forwards and the way we'll generate that content and test our, tool set and pipelines, things like that, for the unannounced stuff. And at the same time, the art team, they wanted to explore, there's some fancy new features that we could perhaps go back and think about. So we have things like a volumetric fog that you can move around and swirl around as you go through it, and different ways of doing the lighting. But when we thought about it and thought, well, just being a really great, nicer looking version of a game which would still frustrate and annoy players doesn't really reflect us in terms of what we are and what we stand for. And when we say we're a gameplay-led company, we can't put out and go down that route of just doing a shinier looking version of something that's gone before. So it did snowball a bit, it grew in scope, and honestly it could have grown in scope even more. We could have gone crazy and done some other things. So we found a happy space that we thought, yeah, this is what we can do with this title. And we got down to it.
That's awesome, because it's, in many cases, at least in my personal opinion, remakes kind of feel unnecessary, like they just kind of polish up what was already a really good experience. And, not to take away from what Yooka-Laylee was, I know a lot of people did enjoy that game for what it was, but Yooka-Replaylee, I think, really shows, for me, like, what a remake should be. It's like, there was a really good idea there in basis, and it just needed some more time to figure out, hey, how do we bring out the best of this game? And so it's awesome that you guys were able to take that time to deliver on that. But where do you even draw the line? Like when you go back, when you're reimagining how to reimagine your game, like where do you decide where do you cut off, it's like, how do you decide how much to change? Where do you draw the line on how much to add? Because you guys added a lot to the game, but nothing in the sense of like any entirely new levels or anything beyond the opening of the game. So yeah, can you tell me more on like how do you manage the scope of this?
Yeah, first of all, I guess we looked at all the critical feedback from before as well and said, what's most prevalent? What are the things people are getting annoyed at most? What's the most divisive thing?
Right.
We did that internally as well at the time, and we had a long list of things we thought we could do better and we'd change if we could and stuff like that. A lot of ours aligned well with what the community was saying as well, so that gives a big bunch of priorities to start focusing on. Just things like the smoothness of the animations. They're kind of not snappy enough for a 3D platformer. Lots of features of the camera, like we never had dithering before, or shadowing a character going behind an object. We always moved the camera, or the camera moved itself, I guess is the way to say it. So we set about just putting in new camera instructions to avoid doing that thing all the time. Just there was so much to go through in terms of negative points to the first game, which is great, right? You want to, if you're going to fix something, you want to know, you have to be confident that you're looking in the right areas and that you are going to do the things that make a difference. Obviously, I'd rather make a 10 out of 10 game in the first place, but looking back at the time, I think, in all honesty, and I would be, super critical of everything we do. we had a fair amount of other external factors that were just like crazy that we were dealing with at the time. It was just like, if we didn't have all those troubles, yeah, we would have produced a better game, high quality game first time around anyway. So
Right.
yeah.
So is it hard to make some of those decisions? You know, obviously you guys had, you know, an idea in mind for the first game, and you know, to make a Banjo-Kazooie like spiritual successor. Of course, some of which you you know, you've changed some of those ideals for Yooka-Replaylee. So is it hard to make those decisions? Like, well, this kind of, you know, in some sense, this goes maybe against the spirit of the original game, like how you no longer unlock moves. So is it difficult to sometimes make those changes? Were there any you found in particular difficult to or challenging to, just, you know, to embrace for the new version?
Yeah, there's definitely some things around the presentation, like talking dialogue heads and the characters and the font style choice, for example. The old style way of doing it had its charm, right? And people have fallen in love with that charm. They really want it to stay that way, but they don't realize, well, actually, this isn't very good for modern audiences who haven't got that built up. And modern audiences is large, and we don't want to do anything to annoy our core fans. We're like, hey, great, they're help make us what we are. But we also, you know, we have things like inclusivity and accessibility, what kind of fonts work best, how many words per line, no auto scrolling, things like that, which help a wider amount of people enjoy and engage with the game. So yeah, there's always a trade-off. You can't please absolutely everybody, but we hope that when we did have to make a tough decision, we've got some really good, well thought out reasons for doing so.
Right. You know, that's a good point. Yeah, you can never please everyone, and I feel like that's got to be especially challenging when it comes to a remaster remake, because now you're kind of inherently creating two different audiences. You have the fans of the original who are revisiting the game, then you have the new fans that are coming to it, and that can just inherently split the fan base. Even with games that are very true to the original, you'll have those who prefer the original, even though some might say objectively the new one's better. So how much do you consider that when you are making a remake? Like, hey, how much do we want to pay, you know, how much do we want to stick true to what fans expected the original versus reaching a new demographic that, yeah, as you said, aren't familiar with the trappings of, you know, a game from 25, 30 years ago?
Yeah, I think everyone would have their own opinions on which bits to touch and not touch. And, you know, I think ultimately when you're guided by this, driven by just wanting to create the best game you can with the resources and the restrictions you've got on you, you're 90% of the time making choices which I think both sides, you know, would ultimately go, oh, okay, yeah, I agree this is bad. There's always going to be those other few elements, and it is tricky, but I think having a bit of a more modern approach, setting us up for what we're going to be doing next, it's nice that people will be able to look back and see, well, there was Yooka-Laylee, Yooka-Replaylee, and there's insert name of future game here, and you'll be able to see that lineage as well and understand how we've started going down that path.
You know, when you first started this, I suppose, did the entire team go back and replay the original game to remind themselves of what it was, and to start looking for ways in which it could be improved? Like, did you tell me more about those early days? Like, yeah, how did you guys start identifying what needed to be upgraded?
Yeah. So like I say, we had this long list from critics, fans, and our own stuff. We went back and started playing it, and honestly, a lot of us just wanted to break controllers and throw them and go, you know, beat ourselves and say off the shame what we were doing, and even looking under the hood and going, oh, wait, how were we doing things back then? We, you know, it's amazing how quickly you forget how you're doing things, especially because we've invested so much in our tools, processes, and pipelines for our future output. You again going back and seeing what you were doing, you're like, oh, we were like cavemen putting a game together. It's ridiculous. Yeah, there was just so much things to improve, and we could have carried on for a long time, but you know, we don't have infinite money, unfortunately, so we have to draw that line somewhere. And yeah, it's kind of cathartic, and it's kind of like, yay, finally we've sorted this out. But yeah, going back and playing the original, there was many eye-opening moments and just what the heck were we thinking moments. And it's not just what you can see in the game, it's like I mentioned, under the hood as well. We're like, oh my goodness, we're bad devs.
Is there is there anything in specific that that you can mention as standing out to you that you're like, what were we thinking then? Whether in the front end or the back end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, and some of it people might think, oh no, that's fine to do that. But one of my pet hates, and something you'd never see in Mario, is when we talk about all the elements that make up a Mario game and are so playable and fun, and they're kind of like a chemistry set, right? We talk about the chemistry set here, and you have all these different bits and pieces. And Mario have built very specific things to do very specific things. And I look back at Yooka-Laylee and we're like, oh my goodness, we were just grabbing any asset quickly. We just searched for lazily in the file and turning it into something else. And the players have come across one thing in one context, and the next time they see it, was like, well, this is used in a completely different way. And you hear the word design language used a lot. And we were just breaking our own rules on design language all the time. And I'm just thinking, what were we doing? And we were running too fast, too far forwards,
right?
Unchecked, I think. And we had, I don't want to say how many, like there's really nice bushes, round bushes with loads of leaves and motion on them. In Tribal Stack Tropics, for example, there was about 7 or 8 different versions of the same asset, just reversioned over and over. So they're identical looking, and we're like, why have we done this? There should be one prefab, right? And you copy paste and put it where you need to. We had so many different decorative pieces for bespoke stuff, and you just don't need that amount. And it makes life difficult for yourselves, especially when you've got to think about file size, perf, and lots of things like that. It could be a whole episode to itself, and I'd have to drag more culprits onto the show to explain themselves.
Like, what stood out to you the most as for you needing to be improved for the sequel, or not sequel, the remake in Yooka-Replaylee, when you revisited the game?
Just the overall experience. I wanted someone to be able to jump into the game and get that sense of progression and flow that they then just at some point just look down the watch and go, oh, it's that time. I should have stopped hours ago. We really just wanted to improve that aspect of it.
Right.
I think the game first time around was its own worst enemy in terms of turning players off. You could jump into the game as it was before. You'd set out with all good intentions to go off and discover something. It was never clearly obvious, well, where should I be going and why? And they had no sense of satisfying reward to the exploration and just basic traversal. And then when you get there, you might not be able to do something anyway. So we were so kind of disrespectful of players' time and punishing as well for no good reason. So this time around it was just all about giving the player a good time. That's why the moves are all open, that's why the worlds are open, go wherever you like. There was quite a nice liberating sense of freedom to the first game, but it wasn't fulfilled with how we executed it. So tweaking that second time around, I think, makes for a much more nice, pleasant time, because there's always something to go and see and do, and you're equipped and you can go do it, and we can just focus on that individual element being fun.
That's a great point. I mean, me hopping into this new one, I immediately felt just how fun it was, and how your exploration is immediately rewarded no matter where you go. Whereas I think one of the frustrations with the original game was you weren't rewarded. You'd be often roadblocked because of you don't have the move for it, or you don't have enough items of this type to unlock something, for instance. However, there are some people who they actually, some people did like that gating progression system, because I feel rewarded when I bought this item from Trouser. So I guess, was there did you guys at any point consider retaining the unlock system to some degree, or was that like one of the first things that was thrown out?
It took a while for us to get comfortable with it, in all honesty. It was when it first got raised, it was one of those eyebrow-raising moments for everyone, and we're thinking, what, shouldn't we? Oh, this is a big integral key component of Banjo-Kazooie and Yooka-Laylee style games. But then when we went back to that guiding thought, does this make the game more fun, more enjoyable? The answer is yes. It became an easy decision, but it does make me desperately question, okay, how to go back and do a moves acquisition 3D platformer really, really well in future. It probably won't be quite how we could like. I think the worlds are too big. The types of challenges you come across. We need to probably make more of the core move set and make sure any key moves are a bit better integrated into the level and the progression and even the story elements of the game. So, you know, maybe in future we'll go out and, you know, I think we've put another monkey on our back wanting to be able to solve that for the fans who really do miss that style and that sense of way to progress through a game. So maybe we'll have a go again in future doing that. But for now, I think we're kind of happy with the results of what we've got.
Yeah, I think you definitely should be. So one element though that, I mean, or I imagine when you open up the moveset like that probably has a pretty big impact on the balance of the game. The level design, you know, how things were designed originally with the moveset you may have had at that time. How does that factor in? Like, I feel like that would almost be like a compounding issue where, like, you know, this one small change like cascades out to affecting everything in the game, you know, for the better largely. But were there any side effects of that you guys didn't anticipate and had to address?
No, not really. And I think we were so unhappy with how it was done originally. You know, we were quite happy to go down this different path. That whole moves acquisition, we thought we were being clever first time around and saying, you know what, people on Banjo, one of the criticisms was that you go into a level and there's no real reason to come back to a level because it was just based around the moves you got in that level.
Right.
And you think, oh yeah, that's a problem. And you look back and you go, actually, that really wasn't a problem that necessarily needed solving or in that way. And there might be a different, smarter way of solving it. But what we thought we were doing was giving players reason to come back and not really thinking, actually, most players don't think that, you know, your first primary objective should be there in the moment, everyone doing lots of things and achieving lots of things and having lots of fun. And we totally got blind to doing that. So, yeah, no, I'm quite happy that we changed course and did what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything that you had planned to leave the same originally that you then had to change? That you then ended up changing your mind on? I don't know, it's like something about the original game, like, oh, we can't touch this, and then realizing, well, maybe we do need to touch up this one area that we hadn't intended to.
Yeah, I think the boss fights stand out to me as one of the features. Like, we knew when we built them the first time around, you know, when I say about some ugly things under the hood and how they're held together, the boss fights stand out as one of those things. And we were like, nah, but we can't really touch them. They'd be too involved. And boss fights, they're kind of a running in joke that they're some of the most expensive things to create for the shortest amount of time overall in an experience. They get a disproportionate amount of money, time, and effort spent on them for what you get out of them. But they're brilliant, right? They're fun. Everyone loves doing them. And if they're done well, they're super satisfying. So we looked at that and we thought, actually, no, we should go back and see if we can reproduce boss fights and change some things better. I think like Breeze Block looks so much better than he did the first time around. And the way is, I remember seeing the first test animation done when all those individual little ice elements came off me. He gained hands and started gesturing with them. That brought a load of life to it. Planet was another one, which was really difficult to go back and tweak and change as well. So yeah, boss fights, I still think there's a lot of room for improvement, but we were going to leave them as was more. But you know, I think as well, when you see so much of the rest of the game coming on in leaps and bounds, you get a bit braver, and it is adding a bit of scope on mid-production to say, oh, should we look at them now? But everyone on the team's passionate about doing whatever they could, and if the answer was, yeah, we can consider doing this stuff now, then we went ahead and did it.
Right. Well, I'm glad you did, especially with the boss fights. I remember I was taking on the planet one, and I'm like, I don't even remember this. Like, this is so impressive looking, and it does stick with you. So I hadn't considered the fact that, yeah, you are spending a lot of resources on something you're only seeing for a few minutes, probably. I think I speak for everyone when I say I'm glad you guys did improve them even more so.
Yeah, and it's the same with I don't know if you've played some, you know, lots of great examples out there, but set pieces within games or certain levels where, you know, I always think of the levels which are played to music, to the beat of a track, things like that, and minecart style levels and stuff like that. They're very specific. And if you think of Mario Odyssey, the New Donk City celebration of, you know, the Celebration Mario event and going through, that's like such, you know, there's some really cool standout moments. And like boss fights, again, a lot gets put into that very element, which is quite linear and just plays through once and isn't really meant to be replayed at all. So I think we'd love to have found ways to get even more things like that, you know, surprises into Yooka-Replaylee that weren't there before. But yeah, they are expensive.
Well, and to that point, you guys reimagined the entire opening of the game. There's a whole like new explorable area. The story's been adjusted a bit. You have the book now talks, which, you know, making him an actual character. And you know, you also do something unique where this game is essentially like a retelling of the events of the first game, so it both like acknowledges Yooka-Laylee as a game that still exists in canon while making this its own thing as well. So yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that process and you know, what made you guys decide to update that?
Yeah, I think the first game, in hindsight, again, one of those things you don't realize at the time. You think, wow, it started badly and slow and a bit too dully and plodding. And we were like, well, story's important, you know, setting the scene, making more of the characters. So we thought how we could break down an introduction sequence into a bit more, some story, some gameplay, some story, some gameplay. And I love the book presentation style that the game starts with now, going back and showing some animated photo frames. Something I've always appreciated in games I play is where you get a very different presentation style rather than go to in-game cutscene. They almost feel like their own little rewards as well. I haven't gone radioactive, that's a lie.
Oh no.
But yeah, being able to do more, play a bit, get some story, have some character development, play a bit more, even just little things like you having to go to the telescope and do something mechanically simple and different and observe, you find where the one book's got flown off to and stuff like that. They just really help with the pace at the start of the game, and it gets the players setting off on the right foot and on the right track. For wow, if this is what the game's like, then I've got to keep going and going and going and going. So you put your best foot forward as early as possible. And on the first day, you just didn't do that right. We had a long, protracted cutscene full of text and dialogue and some in-jokes, which again, in-jokes are great for people when you get them. If they're not, then they're not inclusive. You feel like you're missing out on something. And is this game for me then? Or is it just a joke to the people who played Banjo before? Stuff like that. So
right.
Yeah, and then funnily enough, you'd be surprised, might be surprised, but it was really late in the day that we decided to frame it as a retelling, the character's retelling of the events of the first game. We were just like, at the time, it was more like, no, this game's going to become canon and this is what is going to have happened. But we really liked the idea and thought of, actually, no, what if this is the characters like Fisherman's Tales, you know? Oh, you know, I went back and I caught a fish and, it was that big, but, you expand on it, don't you? And you embellish. And we just saw it as more and more, well, this is what the characters are doing and this is what they were saying actually happened, whether it did or not. And it gave us a bit more freedom of not in license to kind of not worry about upsetting anything canonically that we thought, right. We were kind of happy with that.
That's actually awesome. Yeah, for some reason, I've noticed this in a handful of games now. It's just one of my favorite things. Yeah, when like a remake acknowledges how it fits within the timeline of the series. It's a small little detail, but yeah, I appreciate that. And also, I just getting back to your telescope mention, how you use it to actually see the book now. I believe that telescope was always there, right? You just couldn't interact with it before, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that right? Or
yeah, and I guess that's one of the things you questioned me on earlier, was anything you think you did bad. And I really hate like not meeting player expectations. If there's a telescope in the sea, you want to go and use the telescope, right? If there's a wheel, you want to go and spin it. You want to go and do things and have way more of the environment react and be interactive. So, and then the original plan was to actually have more telescopes discoverable around the level and have more telescope mini challenges and lots of different things to achieve and do with them. Never quite got that in. But maybe in future we could add telescope DLC. put some eyes on a telescope and invent a new character. And like I say, it's not breaking canon. Yeah, it's just people Yooka-Laylee thinking they remember telescopes with eyes are everywhere.
One thing I wanted to touch on too is actually, well, speaking of the story, is I feel like the story has kind of been simplified a little bit overall too. I don't remember all the details of the original, but replaying it, I noticed that there was like an emphasis on the board in the original game, which I believe pretty much goes unmentioned in the new one. And it makes capital B feel like even more of the one in command rather than answering to anyone else. So I was curious, was that, what was the design reason behind that? And, were there other considerations that I'm not even thinking about when it came to addressing the story?
Yeah, like first time around, we wanted it, because we were thinking more of a global shared universe for lots of games with lots of different characters, but they all know each other. And we knew they'll all need their own enemies. We wanted kind of like a Spectre style. There's loads of different evil people and they're all in leagues with each other. And so we had that board, the board of V.I.L E, the Villainous International League of Evil, I think V.I.L E stands for. But we undercooked it, I think. And I'd rather us, cook well fewer elements first before we start going more complex and half cooking things. So this time around, Yooka and Laylee aren't aware of this board having ever existed, so they don't touch upon it much, I guess, is the, narrative reason that they're not involved, but we didn't think the game needed it. I think, first of all, we had to focus more on establishing Capital B and Dr. Quack as the bad guys and not mixing and creating a bit of a grey area or in the developed area, which I think leaves great room for future just to get back to and watch this space. But for the remaster or remake or remakester, no mention of the V.I.L E board.
The only, I could be wrong on this, I saw a comment about this, I think the only reference to V.I.L E is one of my favorite new details in the game, actually, is in Dr. Quack's office. There's that cereal box on his table, and there's a whole word game on the back like you'd find on a real life cereal box, and you can actually play it, and I think one of the words you can find is V.I.L on that. And I just thought that was a fun little touch.
I wasn't even aware of that myself. I know the word search exists, but I've never played it. I've never completed the word search myself.
It works. You should go do it.
Yeah, and it's one of those. I love the fact that the artist went in and added that. It's one of those nice little, when you and you discover things like that, it means a hell of a lot more than really what it is just a simple word search can never mean. It's great to have that detail and that world building. And if anyone out there wants to help us produce actual Rextros, the cereal, let us know. Retro cereal, we could just start a side hustle. But yeah, I think there's maybe soon. It could be something we do, maybe even this side of Christmas, which adds a little bit more meat onto the bones in terms of V.I.L.
Oh, wait, was that a tease? Is something happening involving V.I.L? I'm sorry?
It may be, and I don't want to be like, the guy who disappoints and we didn't do it. So assume no, and then if something, we get to mention something or show something, then maybe that does happen, and it'd be interesting to see if how our fans react to that, and anyone invested in the story and the world, what they're going to think about.
All right, well that sounds awesome. So everyone keep your expectations low just in case, but also be on the lookout. So that's exciting. On the topic of Easter eggs, I actually have a couple questions. For some reason, I remember having this thought as a kid. I love finding Easter eggs in games, but I'm like, is it worth from a development standpoint, do you ask yourself, is it worth the time and money to put into this little thing that people may not ever notice? And that, the cereal reminded me of this, of course. That I think is an amazing detail, but realistically, most people aren't going to find it. I think it was even in the demo of the game, and I didn't discover it myself. I don't remember anyone else pointing out that detail until I was playing the full game and made a little video about it. So, I guess, do you have a perspective as a developer, how do you fit in these Easter eggs? How do you budget for it? How does that process work? How do you even come up with these Easter eggs?
I can tell you how it should work. And that is, you finish everything in scoped on time and budget to the date, and you're sat there going, "Oh wow, we're a little ahead of time. What fun stuff can we add in?" And that's how it should work. But there is always opportunities. You're going along to inject a bit more personality and go a bit deep and go a bit more quirky and do that kind of stuff. And yeah, so long as nothing else is suffering from doing it, then I'm all for it. But the ideal scenario is we finish a game to a satisfactory level.
So do they just kind of come up then during development, or are they actually planned out in advance? You know, I mean, I don't know if you have any examples, but how it's...
No, I think most of them are natural and come up during development. I think if it's forced, it becomes a bit too, it's felt
right
by players, and it's more fun that things just start happening, and even team members surprising each other and like, "Are you aware that this happened?" I'm like, "No." And, "Oh, have you ever gone and done this, or ground pound this spot, or done this?" Nudging each other and encouraging each other. You're like, "No, should I?" "Yeah, you should." "All right, what happened?" "All right, how did that go in?" And we're like, "Yeah, don't tell anyone." And like, okay, so we're doing it for each other, and then it's, and we're doing it for fans as well. And I think it's best when you just cool like that.
It kind of related to the topic of Easter eggs. One of the big cameos in the game, of course, is Shovel Knight returning from the original Yooka-Laylee as well. And then also related, you guys just had the announcement recently that Yooka himself will be appearing in Revenge of the Savage Planet as a playable character. Is that right? Or
it is, yeah. And I remember seeing the email come in saying, "Hey, this opportunity's been mooted," and I'm like, "Seriously? That's like, it's awesome." And it's one of those where it surprises you so much. You think, "No, this can't be true, right? Seriously?" And then as soon as I realized, we were like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely got to happen." Like, we would love that. I think Yooka and Laylee, they've been in a few different games and spin-offs and stuff.
Right.
They're always fun to do. But I think this is probably the best one yet, without, I'm not negging on the ones that have gone before. This was just in terms of, wow, very unexpected, and having a Yooka suit in that game. And I've seen the animations running, and it just looks hilarious. It's just perfect fit. So
what's it like for you as a game creator to see characters you've helped, shape, of course, and help, design the games for, appear in other people's games? Like, is that cool seeing that? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, it's totally bizarre, and it's such a, you didn't really envision something like that happening too much in the early days of your career. Games are very self-contained. They weren't really getting updates after launch or anything. So when it did happen, like back at Rare, it usually happened just with other Rare characters and little nods to each other's universes. Back then, I remember, I think there were Jet Force Gemini and Mr. Pants stuff in Banjo-Tooie.
That's right.
Mr. Pants' ants in Jet Force Gemini and stuff that was just like hilarious. But no, actually seeing like other creators, people who you really respect and you love their games, and then all of a sudden you've had an introduction to them and you're talking about doing something. No, it's brilliant, really great fun. And again, if you just think fun first and foremost, then usually where things get done.
Right. Do you have is there a personal crossover like you'd love to see yourself, either involving a character in your own games or your characters in another game, or any other combination of games, I suppose? Is there like a dream you have, or?
That's such a that kind of question. Like,
it's a blue sky question.
Yeah, I've got so many like answers that I could give, and it's like, this is never going to happen, and that's never going to happen, and that's never going to happen. So I could almost say anything, right? And I think anything from Nintendo, I'd be like, I imagine if they appeared in Yooka-Laylee, or Yooka-Laylee appeared in Banjo or something, right. Or Banjo couldn't, the other way around, or there was a way to tie the universes together. Like, we had a really early idea on Yooka-Laylee at one point, that what if at the end of the game this screen just goes black and you just hear, "Oh wow, that was a wonderful way to have an adventure like we used to," and you just hit zip, and you bear Gahut and Kazooie Breeze come out, and it's like, "Oh, was it Yooka-Laylee in disguise all along?" Yooka-Laylee saying, this has been a fun adventure, time to leave this book world, and they leave the world and they come out of the book on the other end as Banjo-Kazooie back in Grunty's lair or something. So there's loads of stuff I'd love to see happen. I don't think it's ever going to be that realistic in terms of stretching for those dreams, but never say never, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
I don't know how much you can talk. I don't know if there's much more to say about it or how much you can address, but how far did you get in exploring that possible idea? Like, did you reach out to Microsoft at any point, or can you speak to that at all about a Banjo-Kazooie possible?
I think you spoke to one person at Microsoft about 9 years ago who was like, wow, yeah, cool. Let me go talk to someone, and then we never heard back.
Oh, yeah. That's the downside of these massive companies, right? But maybe one of these days, so...
Yeah,
bringing it back to Yooka-Replaylee specifically for a moment, or at least a little bit longer here. When it comes to it in a broader sense, like when looking at like the levels themselves, was there a level in particular of the original game you felt like specifically really needed more attention? Even beyond the tweaks you guys made to the core gameplay, is there any level you're like, we really need to take another look at this and figure out something for it? Or
I think we could say something for every single level, right? and each level's problems were its own problems in terms of how you progress around it and how you're naturally pushed to explore the total level of height. Like, we weren't planning height in the levels with any careful consideration, but when you're expanding a level out, you're creating a huge level of punishment and risk for the player inadvertently by being on different levels and things like that. So now each level had its own problems to solve. And I think one example I really liked how we resolved it was actually on the marsh level 3, Moody Maze Marsh. There used to be a route direct across from the start of the level over to, you could approach where the boss area would be and the flooded area from one angle. And we cut that route off this time around because we found it was just much easier that, well, if you do go forwards after the little page in a drop-down cage puzzle, you can go to the left and do a short loop and end back there. And then after that, all you're doing is going right. You head out right, go through an underwater tunnel, you go across some logs, you end up in the Swamp and Rextro arcade area in the boss. And it becomes a little bit more linear doing that. And I think that helped solve some of the getting lost on that level and then finding what to do next. So we streamlined the flow and the natural level of direction going on. I keep subtly trying to move, hoping that the light sensor picks it up. And I'm failing, so I do apologize for this.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So, well, that's awesome, because I would actually say the swamp ended up for me being, I think, maybe my favorite level of the remake, when I'm pretty sure it wasn't that for me in the original game. And so it was probably at least partially due to that design change you made, but also like just visually speaking, like it was, for me, I felt like it was such a glow up. The original version, just felt really dark and, at least for me, maybe a little depressing. Whereas now it has like these lovely colors throughout, and I just had a really fun time exploring it. So, and I think, for me, I suppose, I guess just visually speaking, that level to me feels like one of the most distinct ones now, or compared to the original version. But I guess for you, how did that process work in like kind of reimagining the visual side of things too for these levels?
Yeah, one of the first things we looked at with Swamp was we knew players were getting lost, and we thought, right, we kind of did Super Mario Kart battle track, like, hey, in every corner there's a different color that you can look out to. So when you're looking at Skynet, and that just looked, it was really useful, but also really beautiful looking as well. And then the individual assets that were produced for Swamp, when they were getting glow-ups from the artists, we kind of just gave them as much free reign as possible. And yeah, I'm a sucker for like atmospheric, moody levels. I think they can be great. The lighting can really work well on them. You get more contrast between what should be light and should be dark and stuff like that. So maybe it's the fact that it did go up levels in terms of visual fidelity so much that it becomes even, the impact of what it looks like now is even greater from what it was before. but yeah, we've always invested in fantastic artists, people able to visualize and find ways to make things look interesting and intriguing, and long may that continue.
Yeah. Well, and to that point of your, of your guys' impressive staff you have, I know I'm not the only one. I was a massive fan of Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I think it's one of the best 2D platformers I've played in the last 10 years. Amazing game. So I'm curious, did the success, at least critically, of that game, and the reception in general of that game, did that affect anything for Yooka-Replaylee? Like, did it kind of make you rethink anything, or how does Impossible Lair kind of fit into the redevelopment of Yooka-Laylee?
Yeah, no, what something we learned a lot on doing Impossible Lair was to let the player stop being so killy, is what I guess. We must have hated our players or something. We're like, yeah, let's try and kill them all the time. And there was a point at which, Impossible Lair was like, well, this is all right for the lair. The whole point of the game is there is this lair and it's out to kill you. But when all the other levels are just as bad, A, they're stepping on the toes of the feature, the big feature of the game, and that waters it down somewhat. And B, why can't you just have fun advancing through a level and then go back and decide where you want to inject more risk and find more secrets and hunt every last key item and things like that. So we really, on Impossible Lair, on the regular levels, just tried to make things more fun and pleasant and achievable, and let players decide for themselves when they wanted to up the ante. And so a lot of the new content and some of the retweet content in Replaylee was looking at where we've just been too mean in the past. Hey, this isn't fun. This is just about surviving. This is like survival horror 3D platforming. That's not our intention. So we should change it and be a bit more like Impossible Lair. That's not to say Impossible Lair was again, throwing way too much on the screen and stuff in terms of assets and layers and depth of the scene. It's stuff only we look back now, and I don't want to destroy anyone's memory of it. No, I'm just going to keep having. Yeah, Impossible Lair, it was brilliant. It was all good, nothing bad in it. But trust me, really, we can go back and we can nitpick and go, wow, even if we went back and did the Impossible Lair style game again, I think we'd do even better. I'm really confident.
Well, to that point, I have to ask, now that we have the Yooka-Replaylee, is there any chance that there would be a Impossible Laylee, I guess?
As much as I love the idea of doing it, I think the motivation for doing it with Yooka-Replaylee just doesn't exist with Impossible Lair.
Right.
And giving it a glow up, I still don't think it's a bad looking game by today's standards.
No, not at all.
Yeah, sure enough, you could do some stuff, but you're kind of not really achieving anything, and it's not really advancing anything that we don't need or can't already find out in terms of how it could improve the way we do things on future games as well. I would love to make another Impossible Lair style game, Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lairs or something, and there's more regions of a map, and each region has its own mini Impossible Lair as well as a grander lair. I'd love to do something like that, but I think there's low confidence within the company that would commercially do well right now, which is a shame. I really, trust me, when Playtonic released something which we just didn't expect, and all of a sudden just goes gangbusters, and we're a cash rich company, we'll go and do Impossible Lairs, and we'll go and do it at that point.
Well, I need everyone who's watching this right now. If you liked Yooka-Replaylee or any Yooka-Laylee game, go check out the Impossible Lair if you haven't already. It's a fantastic game. As Gavin was saying, it holds up amazingly well. It's a lot of fun. I need this sequel. I need more of it. So do it for me.
We need to do it as well. Honestly, I'd love to go back. We're kind of gutted that it didn't sell as much, but we had people telling us that they thought it was DLC for the first game, the messaging around it and the marketing positioning for it. We didn't want to go out and say, hey, this is a spiritual successor to Donkey Kong Country, even though in our own minds internally, perhaps it was.
Right.
But we kind of wanted it to stand on its own 2 feet a bit more than rather push that angle. And Donkey Kong Country is a Nintendo-owned IP, we love Nintendo and wouldn't want to go around saying something like, hey, our game's a spiritual successor to first party Nintendo, I think. Fine doing it to Microsoft, by the way. So, I'm joking. But yeah, it'd be great to go back and do more of that. But yeah, sadly, for one reason or another, it just didn't sell as well. And we have to be like really honest with ourselves, and maybe like the fact that it was Yooka-Laylee, and as soon as people think Yooka-Laylee, they were thinking average 3D platform and not even going to check out what Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lair means or could be. That might be something we have to bear in mind and be honest about. You know, I mean, as much as we love Yooka-Laylee, you know, we've built careers, many of us here, on inventing new IP multiple times. So it might mean that that's a better path forward for us to take. Who knows? We ultimately don't decide that. I guess gamers and players decide that by voting with our wallet.
So it's all your fault that we don't have a Yooka-Replaylee or Impossible Lair 2 yet, everyone. I'm joking, but still, go check out the first one at least. It's a lot of fun. Let's see here. I did want to ask, actually kind of related to that, you know, how much of it do you think, like, do you think it's a timing thing too, possibly? You know, for like Impossible Lair, for example, because I mentioned this because right now it almost seems like we're in a almost kind of a renaissance for at least remasters or remakes of 3D platformers. Like Croc came back recently, Pac-Man World came back, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 got their remasters. You know, DK Bonanza is a new game, but in the style of that classic collectathon, and of course Yooka-Replaylee as well, which, you know, as you mentioned, is a remakey or remaster key. What did you call it again? I like that word.
Remakester.
Remakester. That's it. That's a good one. So do you think like maybe the time wasn't just right for it, whereas like right now there seems to be a thirst for 3D platformers, or maybe it's just coincidence that they're all happening at the same time here?
I don't know. I bet it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. And I've got to take this opportunity to shout out like Bubsy coming back as well.
Right, yes.
Demon Turf friends, my bros, you know. So what I will say is the moment, like, Nintendo seemed to be classed in many people's minds in the industry as the Nintendo industry, and then there's the video games industry. So if there's an example of something doing really well over on the Nintendo Switch with Nintendo first party content, people kind of don't say, oh, well, that means it'll definitely be great on Xbox, PC, Steam as well. You know, then Astrobot came along.
Right.
Astrobot was the first example of, wow, Nintendo style quality, brilliant, superb experience, great characters, really well positioned as, like, you know, within the PlayStation hardware and in game, and it feeling like this world lives inside your PlayStation box. And that was the first time I sensed certainly since Playtonic's been going, that many other people who kind of, you couldn't sway them to think 3D platforming was worth their time and money investing in, because it was a Nintendo only thing. When that came along, that did actually make a lot of noise behind the scenes in the industry as well, I think. And suddenly a lot of people were thinking about 3D platformers again and doing crossover IP and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, whatever the reason is, I'm just glad. You know, there's a lot of great games and a lot of good 3D platformers in the works as well. Ruffy in the Riverside, that was another fun one as well. That was like really awesome. We saw that quite early on and we thought, wow, this game's got a ton of potential.
Yeah, that game was great. It's super original, super unique, and yeah, I just had a blast with it. So it's nice seeing that kind of resurgence here. Although that does remind me, I have to mention one other game here that you worked on, which I'm also a huge fan of, which unfortunately didn't get the reception that I think it deserved, being Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I adored that game, and unfortunately it seemed like not everyone else in the world did. So I was just curious, you know, have you, you know, for you, I guess, have you looked back at that game at all? What are your memories of it? And do you think it was maybe too far ahead of its time? You know, this is a game that was all about making your own vehicles, and years before Minecraft would exist, which, you know, is about making vehicles, but making worlds. And I'm just curious as to, you know, your thoughts on that game now, what, 20 years removed almost?
Yeah, I think it was a super cool concept and ahead of its time. Like, I think it really was. I think the issue was the fact that, you know, Banjo was announced. It was kind of, people had this expectation of very 3D platformer centric focus update the series, and it wasn't that. And
Right.
it becomes hard in people's mind for whatever reason, and I don't think they're wrong to disassociate that. I think if you'd made Banjo 3E and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, people would be like, hey, this is great. You get something of what we know we're going to love and something, you know, expanding our minds. And I do think, again, only because I'm always critical and stuff I've worked on and look back and think, what would I do differently? How would I do things differently? It wasn't really my choice. The designs on the game, you know, we're talking top level designers. It was brilliant. There was so much focus on the sandbox nature of it, which was great. It's just a personal taste thing. I always look back and think, was there a way to make it feel a little bit more like lock and key when you were unlocking an item for the first time? Was there a place to go and use that item in a way that meant the world expanded, or you reached a new area and did something a little bit more Banjo-like? So maybe some of the vehicle parts that you acquired could be the equivalent of Talon Trot and things like that. There's a little bit of it in Showdown Town, I think, when you were building your core vehicle and it gained some new abilities to go around Showdown Town. But if that could have been kind of embedded within all the levels a bit more like that, I think that would have been a bit more Banjo-like. But I don't want to take too much away from the core concept of the game. The team, you know, it was a big team that delivered on it at the time. It was an adventurous game to tackle on, and they were great fun to work with. Got so many good memories working on that game. But yeah, I think re-released today, and you know, even pushed even more to be even more sandbox and free roaming, and the way you unlock and you can go around the world. I think it'd do really well.
Yeah, I think yeah, that kind of idea would definitely work better probably these days. Sadly, people weren't ready for it then. Plus, of course, the whole expectations thing you mentioned with you know Banjo-Kazooie 3. You did mention one thing that actually reminded me of another question I had about specifically about the design of Yooka-Replaylee, which is, you know, you mentioned the progression of nuts and bolts could have been improved, where you unlock something, you get, you know where to use it in a previous level or something. You know, we talked about already how you opened up the moveset in Yooka-Replaylee, completely dropping the unlock mechanism of the original. But was there any other consideration or ideas for possibly reworking it? In the original game, you would buy the moves from Trouser, but did you guys consider any other ideas for that beyond just you know, giving you access to everything all at once?
Yeah, we must have done, and as you know, we completely changed the Rextro arcade games, for example.
Oh right, yes, I meant to ask about those.
Yeah, and there's this new kind of level building tech been developed with their own in-house tools, and Rextro's kind of been a test run for some of that as well. Yeah, we wanted to consider, could we do brand new world from scratch? We also had kind of like mysterious pagey challenge realms, a bit like looking at from Impossible Lair when you go and did the pagey power challenges and you were kind of like in the vortex of books and pages when you were doing those levels, which expanded the world map. We had some ideas, something similar for Replaylee, that you'd be able to go off and do lots of different kind of specific challenges built around testing mastery of each of the moves in Yooka-Replaylee. But yeah, we couldn't quite do that. And I was pleased we got to redo the Rextro levels, though, because I thought, yeah, that was really a fresh look and something we knew people wouldn't have been expecting, but we definitely knew a lot of people weren't happy with first time round.
Yeah, the Rextro levels are such a charming addition and like a nice kind of change in pace too. They're just this really kind of fun self-contained game. So can you tell me more about that process? You know, how did those Rextro games come about? Were there did you guys explore other ideas possibly for the replacement of the previous games that were there?
Yeah, we had a few different thoughts in terms of just, for one, just tweaking what was there, maybe lowering the requirements to succeed, things like that. Yeah, and there's a few different ideas mooted in terms of, well, what are the, you know, Rextro old style games maybe Rextro could have done. But then we also thought about, well, what's something that could possibly make use of this new tech that we developed, but is also much more pick up and instantly playing, quicker to understand. And I love the fact that Rextro is just a stick and one button, and there's no camera control. And
right,
we really wanted to test the designers in terms of, can you come up with and make ways for this one stick, one action way to be used in different contexts, and each level have its own particular theme, whether that's grabbing the rails, whether it's the way, if it's enemy focused or pushing blocks and stuff like that. So no, I thought they were really fun, and it's probably closest to the we've ever been in the past few years to a new game from Playtonic. Basically, it's its own game within a game. And we did honestly say, well, I hope people really enjoy these, and we got the reaction we were hoping for, which was people saying, hey, I wouldn't mind a whole game focused around this. Whether that's something we do or do even in a more expanded form in the future, we'll wait and see. But it was I think it was a successful little experiment we did.
Yeah, it absolutely was. A total blast. It reminded me a little bit of the Captain Toad levels in Super Mario 3D World, which then went on to become its own game. So we'll see if that happens or not. And to that point, I fully realize you probably can't tell us much, but I have to ask anyway. Can you give us any idea as to what is in the future for Playtonic games? I know you guys are also a publisher, and of course we know Yooka is going to be making that cameo soon in Revenge of the Savage Planet. But is there anything else coming down the pike you can give us a little hint at all, or...?
Yeah, there is. It has to be, right? So I think maybe next year, something, I certainly don't want fans to think they're going to have to wait 5 years every time for something new from us. Hopefully we've got the things much shorter. And if everything goes to plan, then, every year for the next 2-3 years, there should be something fun to look forward to and very distinctive and unique. So I can't say too much more than that.
All right.
We're always looking as well for like an up-and-coming developer or a developer we can support. I think we've had some amazing games come out with Playtonic Friends, games that we really get to, more so than our own content, pick and choose from an angle of, hey, do we want to play this? And is this the game that we would buy? It's quite shocking. I don't think I've ever worked on a game, probably other than, I think Impossible Lair is the only one where I think I would naturally be the audience for that game and I would play it myself, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so no, I think with Playtonic Friends as well, and there's Little Gator game, Gator of the Year edition, Gator in the Dark. So they've had it, that game's like already amazing. Little Gator game, don't know if you've played it, check it out. And it's been expanded upon and more added to it, way more than I think people will realize. But it's happening with Yooka-Laylee, Replaylee, the leap in difference is quite big, and surprisingly presently so.
Sounds great. I haven't checked that out myself, so I'll have to add that to my list. So awesome. Well, those were most of my questions. If you're still okay on time, though, I have a few more questions from our audience, if that's okay.
Yeah. Let me take my professional pose.